Hello, hello, hello. This is Pack from Pack's Perspective,
And this is Jared from Frosty Films. How we doing?
and we are back at you with another episode. This is episode 4 of Schlock Talk. We're going to be going over the Odyssey, Spider-Man Brand New Day, talking a lot about that. That's been making waves like crazy, and see what other Marvel discourse in general comes our way. How you feeling today, Jared?
Not too shabby, my friend. Movies are booming right now, not just viewership wise, but financially they're kind of soaring in a way we haven't seen in quite a minute, comparative to numbers that we used to see pre-pandemic. Back in the old ancient times, some may say 2019 era. So yeah, no, it's an exciting time. I'm excited to jump, into this current slate of films today.
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure I read something that said this is the highest grossing domestic box office since 2019. So it's movies are so back, dude. It's been such a great year for movies in general, not just the quality of movies that are coming out, but just the amount of, everyday people that would maybe just see 3 or 4 movies a year showing up in droves for new movies, for original movies, for exciting voices, for smaller stuff, for bigger stuff, for all stuff in general. We talked there already on this pod about Obsession and Backrooms, and July was always the month of the heavy hitters that I was eyeing on my calendar, when just kind of surveying 2026 in general and what kind of movies were coming out this year. Both of my most anticipated releases, being the Odyssey and Spider-Man Brand New Day, were both this month, and we watched them. And yeah, let's dive right in with the Odyssey that came out on July 17th. It's currently around 915, 920 million so far. So yeah, Christopher Nolan really knows how to get butts in seats. It follows Odysseus, played by Matt Damon, that is the king of Ithaca, coming home from a 10-year Trojan War, and he's trying to get home by any means necessary, and he's fighting gods and monsters and beasts and just trying to get back home. What'd you think of this movie, man?
Christopher Nolan's latest. Some may say greatest, and some may not. I had a unique experience with this film, to say the least. Going into it, I can say safely that I am a fan. Over the years, I feel like I have grown a little distant when it comes to his work, but overall, I can't deny the effect that he's had on me as a person, as someone who loves stories, who loves movies. Truthfully, you know, when it comes to fully loving film and fully like embracing it as an art form, the first film that really like changed my perspective was actually his, and that being it was The Dark Knight. Obviously heralded as one of the goats of comic book movie cinema, one of the goats of 21st century cinema, and rightfully so. I still think that movie holds up tremendously well, but obviously we're not here to talk to that about that movie today. And yeah, we're here to talk about the Odyssey. Uh, Going into it, I see that he has had a big passion for the story throughout his entire storytelling life, and it shows. A lot of the themes of this story are very resonant in a lot of his other works, and seeing this movie unfold, it was very transparent that this story has had a big effect on him for his livelihood, which, that's on that level I can really admire. But what I found interesting is on a technical level, yes, I can see his heart for the story when it comes to just playing out the beats in a pretty organic manner as far as I'm aware. I'm not too aware of all the beats of the story. I plan on reading it, but obviously we're here to talk about the film. And on a story beat level, just a play-by-play, I think it was effective enough, but for me at least, just being effective enough isn't enough for me to get super invested into the story. I can acknowledge that like what was being shown on screen was technically impressive sometimes not as much. But when it comes to being emotionally invested, I just kind of felt distant towards this film. I just felt like it didn't give me as much time I would personally like to live and breathe with these characters. A lot of these shots just weren't as long lasting as I would have liked when it came to being as introspective when it comes to the personal character beats. It just left me a little hollow in that regard, and which is unfortunate. Obviously, that's kind of the selling point of a narrative. Not every movie is trying to get you, to love the characters by any means, but when it comes to an epic hero's journey, I just felt like the hero that I am following, I truthfully just didn't care. I didn't care about if he made it home or not. I didn't care what was going on when he wasn't there, And like obviously that's painting it pretty black and white. There was moments I was more intrigued than others, but overall I just kind of felt pretty distant towards this film.
Yeah, that's completely fair. This movie definitely had some ginormous shoes to fill, not just coming from Christopher Nolan, who, needs no introduction, but also coming off his latest film, Oppenheimer. Nolan has been my favorite director for a really long time. I love The Prestige so much. That movie, I fuck with that movie on so many levels. Inception is in my Letterboxd top 4. That's one of my all-time favorites. The Dark Knight has had a huge impact on me and anyone else who's seen it. I just love his work. He's always been I just love how he can execute a concept so effectively, and the concepts of his movies are so unique, and how often they play with time and remorse and regret. And Oppenheimer is arguably his best movie, depending on who you ask. Oppenheimer is one of the best movies of the 2020s, and that was a film that earned Nolan not just the commercial success he's used to, making a huge splash at the box office, but also put him in a level of critical success as far as award season goes that is new to him, despite making fantastic movies throughout his career. He's gotten nominations for the most prestigious awards throughout his entire career, but he's never taken home that big award, and Oppenheimer in the 2024 Academy Awards, I don't know exactly which number it was, but, he took home Best Picture, he took home Best Director, he earned his place among the critical and award circuit. He earned new graces and a new level of prestige. I did not do that intentionally, but, The point is, the Odyssey following up Oppenheimer is a big task. With him reaching that level and being that guy, everyone has their eyes on him. What is he going to do next? And the Odyssey is such a huge undertaking. This is a several thousand-year-old poem that's an epic, one of the most renowned and celebrated stories of all time, one of those quintessential hero's journey type stories, and adapting it into a modern film is no small feat. And when I'm watching this, I am watching another Christopher Nolan movie, and there's very rare times where that kind of bothers me, where his more grounded, practical, and really clinical style of filmmaking doesn't really seem to match what I feel like I should be watching. He has such a down-to-earth imagination when it comes to how he wants to frame certain moments, and having to adapt something that takes place in the mythical ancient world of Greece, I imagine something a lot more bombastic and imaginative and out there than what he's willing to do. So this wasn't my favorite of his movies by any means.
Yeah, no, when it comes to Nolan's specificities, I just feel like the kind of filmmaker he is doesn't tend to indulge in people say a lot, but the whimsy of the wonder of what is out there that's not in reality. And I think a story like this, in theory, it could be cool to see a giant version of this story. And obviously there is cool moments in this version, but truth be told, I just don't feel like Nolan was the right choice. And so I find it very fascinating that he likes this story so much, because when I see it, his version at least, I just see it and go, that's okay. That's cool. But outside of that, it rings very hollow, like I said earlier. And for me at least, I just was like, wow, like, what's the point of bringing this to the big screen if this is the most you're gonna do of this beautiful, wondrous, epic story. And I know when I say whimsy, people will often say like, well, that's actually really not the tone of the story, and that's a fair thing to bring up. But when I think of whimsy, it doesn't just have to be just like happy-go-lucky adventures. No, like, it's about balance, about levity. It's about letting the story breathe more. And there's never a moment where like the characters felt down to earth to me. It's very stoic in nature, and stoicism obviously has its place. And Nolan's movies are very embellished in that sensibility. But this kind of story, I just felt would have very much benefited from a little bit more joy, and just a little bit more of a human element. I've heard that the character of Odysseus in nature, he's more of a trickster in the novels apparently, and you get to see just like different angles to him. Whereas in this, like, yeah, like I do get a sense of his like humanity, and one aspect I did really like was his inability to cast aside some of his emotional beef with some of the things, such as the Cyclops. I mean, we're all familiar. I mean, I guess I'm not, but obviously the story's been around for a minute. But he chooses to lash out in anger when he throws a spear at the Cyclops when his men have obviously been killed by him. Something he didn't need to do, but because of his emotional well-being, he chooses to act that in that nature. And so he's not a perfect man, and I like and respect that. And Matt Damon, he's a likable enough actor. Obviously he's been around the block for a minute, so like he's got that just raw, just go get him Americano energy of like, you know what, I want to see this dude succeed. And on that level, it's entertaining enough. But like past that, I'm just sitting there like, okay, like what else about him? So yeah, it's just very frustrating. He feels very well in that one note, and same with a lot of the cast. As much as I love a lot of these awesome A-list celebrities, I just felt like Nolan didn't really let them shine, or the script for that matter didn't let them shine as much as they have been in previous roles. So yeah, I just it just kind of, it felt weird in that sense of like having all these big name actors, but just not having them go as big as they possibly could have.
Yeah, I think there's some questionable direction throughout the cast and throughout the performances. Some of the actors are like clocking into work and doing their thing as usual, and others seem a little bit lost. Like they kind of stumbled onto set one day and didn't spend as much time with the script, or like Nolan didn't give them the most explicit direction. Some of the performances are a little bit wonky. Matt Damon, it's a good performance, but I feel like it's far from his best. He doesn't feel that distinguishable from some of Matt Damon's characters he's played over the years. I would have also liked to see that wiliness, that trickster nature to him. Of all the things to change and omit, I think possibly Odysseus's most iconic moment is telling the Cyclops, "I am nobody," right? That's such a insanely recognizable moment to show his cunning. So when the Cyclops, tells Poseidon, who did this to him, he says nobody, right? Stuff like that. I'm like, why would exactly, if it ain't broke, why exactly would you change that? Anne Hathaway's in it. She's great. She kills it. I think she's definitely gonna get award buzz from it. This is a very loaded role. She has to play both, like, she has to hold on to just enough hope that Odysseus is going to come back, but she still has to project enough strength as queen to just kind of hold down the fort while he's gone. She has some very standout scenes with Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson. Speaking of Pattinson, yeah, he's also great here. he brings such a weird energy that's in comedy. He brings a lot of, someone get these beggars out of here is what people keep quoting from the movie. The delivery on that is just so perfect. Pattinson's having a hell of a year, man. Tom Holland is here and he's he's in the movie, like he's not distracting. He's not bad. He's not distracting, but it's so I've always respected him as an actor, seeing some of his other dramatic roles outside of blockbusters and superhero movies. And we'll talk about a blockbuster very shortly in which he turns in a much stronger performance. But when you see him share the screen with Anne Hathaway, you'll watch a scene with Tom Holland. You'll watch a scene with Tom Holland like in isolation and be like, yeah, he's doing all right. He's in this movie. I don't just see Peter Parker. Like, yes, this is a character in this movie. And then he'll be in a scene with like Pattinson or Anne Hathaway, and you're like, oh, there's levels to this shit. He's not at that level yet.
Yeah. He's trying, and he's doing a lot better job than I would do. But that being said, for me at least, it's hard not to just see him as insert famous Tom Holland actor here. I felt that for plenty of the actors. Mia Goth's in the background, and I guess for her, she's barely in the movie, so like that's not the best example. But there's just so many actors that show up and they read the lines, and I don't feel anything. And it felt like anyone could have said these lines.
It felt a little stunt casty, like Zendaya as Athena. Every scene she had, I'm like, that could have been anybody. Like, why exactly did it have to be her? Lupita Nyong'o is in it. She's playing dual roles, and she has like a collective 3 minutes of screen time. She doesn't really have a standout scene. I'm just like, okay, she's a little underutilized. Bernthal's in this, and he's just exposition man. Like, there's a lot of strange casting choices and performances that just feel a little grubby. And then you randomly have John Leguizamo, not even, top billing on the poster, just like fucking killing it, man. Like Leguizamo's acting like it's his last role as like Odysseus's most loyal advisor and everything. He's so fucking excellent in there. And then Himesh Patel is also in it as Eurylochus, the right-hand man to Odysseus on the voyage. I think he was really good too. And so I guess the point is it's kind of a mixed bag. At some points, the performances feel inspired and like everyone's so honored to work with Nolan. Everyone joined the cast without even reading the script except Pattinson. Pattinson was like, can I read it first? And then
we're next door neighbors now. You better let me read your script.
Yeah, exactly. So, wait, deadass?
Yeah.
Him and Nolan are neighbors?
Take this with a grain of salt. I saw it on X, where...
You did not just call it X.
I did.
It's Twitter. It's Twitter.
It's a bit. It's not a bit. I call it X because you're right. It's Twitter.
Whatever.
It doesn't matter. Point is, I saw it on whatever platform it's called today. It'll be called something else in a couple months. Where Pattinson and Nolan apparently will, occasionally go over to each other's place to go watch films together, which is cute.
Oh, that's sweet. I love that as just like an image. That's awesome. But yeah, I guess it's kind of a mixed bag cast direction wise. There's a lot to be said about the language and the modernization of the script and dialogue, where it's just using completely modern colloquialisms like Tom Holland's "I gotta find my dad." It kind of takes you out of it for a second. It's weird. I wish there was just a lot of these actors come from different places. I don't know why they all have to speak American English. I feel like it would add a little bit to the immersion if these characters were speaking in a variety of accents and tones. Yeah, just having them all speak American English is a little strange.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. I tend to... truth be told, I just forgot about that. The fact that it does originate, in Greek mythology, and obviously this is an adaptation, so, Nolan is putting his American actors and a bunch of English actors front and center, which, obviously to a general audience, they're not going to care that much. But for, people that really love the story, like seeing it be more authentic would probably go a long way. And I don't know. I think that's reasonable to feel that way. I don't have as much attachment to the story, but knowing of its origins, like, yeah, that's very understandable, So yeah, I totally get that. And, I agree as far as like some of the actors are killing it. I love Anne Hathaway. I've always thought she's an incredible actor. Pattinson's my favorite working actor today. But the rest of the cast, like, what really frustrates me is just they're just there. They're just there, and it's a recognizable face, and for some that's great, but for me, like, it's hard to get as invested sometimes when I just see these guys show up in movie after movie, and if the script isn't doing a good enough job to help differentiate their performances, naturally, for me as a viewer at least, I'm not going to be as invested if it were a bright new face in the scene. I know people will defend Nolan being like, and I know he's vocal himself as far as liking to work with a lot of his past actors, and obviously that makes sense, right? Like, the few films I've worked on, I've worked with similar people. But that being said, when it comes to, like, you're making the biggest of the biggest movies, I think it would be nice to change up some of these actors and bring on some new blood into the scene, really show off like some new talents, and I don't want a lot of, his regulars to just never return. No, like, they're great. Like, I love when Anne Hathaway shows up. I wouldn't want to change that. But, like, there's just some times where I'm just like, does John Bernthal need to be in this? No, I don't think so.
Does Zendaya?
Zendaya, what's her name? Charlize Theron. She doesn't need to be in, like, it's just, to me, it's distracting. If you're not going to give the actor a media enough role through the script, through direction, is it really necessary to bring in Charlize Theron? No, it's there because it's reliable. It's convenience at a certain point.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier, like, why, if you're going to be this tethered to reality, why adapt this material in particular, and why bring this to the big screen? I think it's because Nolan knows how to craft an image and a spectacle. He's been working with Hoyte van Hoytema, who is cinematographer for quite a few films now, and there are a lot of visually striking images in this movie, and they know how to craft a set piece. I think why this movie's being absolutely lauded right now with both critics and audiences. It's making a boatload of money at the box office, and even, casually, most people I talk to who've seen it, who I know, really enjoy it. And I love how Nolan attracts a crowd. He knows how to get butt in seats because he understands the value of creating a memorable theatrical experience when it comes to scale and sense of wonderment, when you can immerse yourself in just like the sense of atmosphere he crafts with this practicality when you're on the ships with the crew and you're on these Greek, and Icelandic kind of, vistas. He really knows how to put you in a moment, and I think that's commendable. There's something to be said about that. There's just the scale and the set pieces, just how much audiences yearn for this kind of filmmaking.
Yeah, it's a kind of art form, we don't see as much nowadays, right? Obviously, in the modern age, special effects, CGI is just, it's everywhere, and it's a resource that, filmmakers use ad nauseum, when it's readily available. Why wouldn't you use it? And that's always something I've always commended about Nolan as a filmmaker. While I don't necessarily agree as far as some of his choices when it comes to adapting the source material, I do really respect and admire the fact that, if possible, I will try to make this as grounded as possible. I think there's a middle ground, and that's where he fits in. Maybe one day. But right now, he obviously leans one way. And when it comes to that, factor of trying to stay grounded, yeah, it works. Like, when I saw those giants roll up, those are actual giants. There's obviously now behind the scenes photos of the actual giants in comparison to some small, I think I saw women and maybe some other people that can have that contrast as far as heights go. So that's really compelling. And yeah, I can commend that, but at the same time, like for me at least, obviously I can't speak for everybody, but when I'm watching this and I am seeing that scale and that sense of atmosphere, while I can say this, when it comes to some of his other films, that sense of atmosphere I think is very present, and it does get me wrapped up into the story that he is telling. This time, like, it's so fleeting that I'm never able to like actually feel the atmosphere for more than a fleeting second. It just goes away in a moment's notice, and I just am not given a chance to breathe with the characters, with the scene, and therefore I'm never able to really connect with them on a human level. I just felt like these shots, and when it came to the editing choices, was just so fast in nature. And on that note, I just felt distant, which obviously is unfortunate because, there's been times where I don't feel that way when it comes to his films. Like I said earlier, The Dark Knight, I love Bruce Wayne as a character, but even outside the Batman mythos, Interstellar, usually people praise that film above the rest of Nolan's films when it comes to emotions. When you see Cooper see that recording of, his children and how much time has passed and how it affects him, it hurts you. It tears you apart. And I wish I got even, a glimpse of that sensation in this film in particular.
For sure. This movie really gets lost in the edit for me. Jennifer Lame is the same person that edited Oppenheimer, and Oppenheimer is basically a flawless movie in my opinion when it comes to the edit. You're talking a 3-hour grounded biopic that just whisks by for me. I love that how that movie is stitched together. This movie, there's just so many choices editing wise that just kind of breaks me out of it. How it jumps around frequently, how it plays with time. I wasn't able to get emotionally invested in one timeline and one set of events because they just kind of tease you with it. We see the fall of Troy from so many different angles at different points in the movie, and they always hold back on showing you the extended sequence, the full raid of Troy. And it just the way Nolan wants to unravel information with how sparse, the action is in the pacing, how the pacing is just kind of a roller coaster here. I wasn't really able to get invested. I wish the movie started with him on the beach with Charlize Theron as Calypso. I wish the movie started there and the entire movie is him unraveling and recollecting how he got there and why he needs to get home. There's one scene towards the beginning where he's having a tender moment with Penelope, and that's like his why, but that's like a 2-minute scene that gets really drowned out in a sea of set pieces and action and exposition and all this other stuff. I really wasn't sold on the why, on exactly why and how he had to get home over anything else. I think part of it is because we didn't really see the effect that the Trojan War had on Odysseus and his men. It's all told through flashbacks, and not just flashbacks, fragmented flashbacks on top of that, where we, like I said, we just get bits and pieces stitched throughout before we get on the main, thematic topic of the movie being the fall of civilization and Odysseus's guilt being the first main one to break Zeus's law and kind of betray this sense of hospitality and goodness that held up civilization at the time, and just seeing, him coming to grips with his actions, his reckoning. There's a lot of thematic parallels between this and Oppenheimer. But just how much it jumps around and how busy the movie feels, I just really wasn't a fan of the edit overall.
Yeah, for me, when you bring up the edit, it's especially apparent within that last brawl when the drama comes to a head, when Odysseus returns to reclaim his throne, essentially, and he's fighting all these suitors, and Tom Holland's there, and it cuts to him, and then it cuts back, and it's super claustrophobic, and it's just so fast paced when it comes to the editing and the cuts, and it's hard to follow. And when it comes to Nolan, he's never been the strongest action director. He's had good set pieces, and there's some decent set pieces here, but when it comes to the hand-to-hand stuff, that's never been his strongest suit, and it's very apparent here. And so, like, when I saw that last scene, it just truthfully checked me out of the movie, because I'm just like, damn, like, this is what the movie built up to. And it's frustrating because narratively, it was the most compelling part of the movie for me, but when it got to like the catharsis and seeing him unleash his anger against these suitors, I just was like, all right, I don't really know what's going on, so therefore, like, I'm not as emotionally invested as I wish I could be. And just the way it was just structured, I was just like, this is messy. To me, it came out very amateurish, and obviously, like I said earlier, Nolan's never been the best with action when it comes to hand-to-hand, so I just left a little like disappointed when it comes to the end of the film, because that's like the last thing before like the final monologue that you're left with. So yeah, I don't know. It's a messy film for me. I can acknowledge some a little bit of good, a little bit of bad, a little bit of both. But yeah, it's a mixed bag for me personally.
I was super let down by the action overall. Whenever I think of the standout sequences of this movie and the highlights, the things I really marinate and walk away from remembering this movie, none of it has to do with the action. I think there are very intense moments of suspense. I think there are some very impressively choreographed and coordinated set pieces in the film, but none of it has to do with the pure action. That just feels really weightless, really bloodless, and a little tame, especially for an R-rated movie depicting, Greek war in the ancient world. It feels like he has a hand tied behind his back when it comes to the lack of brutality here. It's very, very strange. The action just really didn't grab my attention. In the middle of the movie, not even the middle, first third, when we're still establishing the world and the characters, Tom Holland has this scene with John Leguizamo, and he's kind of training in combat, and John Leguizamo is explaining how to find an opening, how to counter, and everything like that. And it's like this huge character moment for Tom Holland's character, to grow and evolve as a leader and as a combatant. And in the last action scene against the suitors, Tom Holland is fighting the same guy that he sparred with, and I'm waiting to see it in the choreography. I'm waiting to see the story evolve and for this moment to come full circle in the choreography itself, where he looks for the opening he was earlier in the movie, where the guy gives it to him and he takes advantage and counters. That does not happen in the choreography at all. He twirls around him. He slices his throat. No blood, by the way, when he slices his throat. And Tom Holland, like, takes a breath, and it's like a beat, like basically waiting for the audience to cheer. Like, he did the thing he was training for. And I just felt nothing. Like, I did not see the move. The choreography was just so unimpressive to me. It just wasn't. This movie's just lacking to me. I just think it's one of Nolan's weaker films.
Yeah, I gotta do my Nolan tier list soon, the old updated tier list, but it's gonna be pretty low for me personally, and that's a shame. But plenty of people are liking it. I am happy for them, but right now I'm kind of mixed. I'm personally on a 5 out of 10. What about you?
Damn. You always go a little bit lower than I do. It's a nice little back and forth we have. I tend to grade on a curve, I guess. I go a little higher maybe than I feel like you go a little lower than the average person, which is good. It's good for you to have your own scale, it's a 6.5 for me. I stay with my original rating from the review. The more I think about it, it's still an impressive feat of filmmaking on a pure technicality standpoint. I just wanted more from the story and characters and action. I just don't think it was the complete package. Pretty much a letdown from Nolan standards, so 6.5.
Anyways, it's gonna win Best Picture.
Oh my god! Yeah, it's gonna.
I don't think
it's gonna get nominated.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, real quick, comes to my rating scale. It's funny you bring that up because recently, just when hanging out with our buddies, I brought up the fact that like it feels like one every 5 movies I have a contrarian take, and I'm starting to come to realization that it's probably more than that because I think just the way I rate movies or just rate any kind of media in general, I kind of feel like I scale things differently. And so when it comes to scores, I feel like what I give something, it might be comparable to someone else's score, but just the way someone else scores something, it just means something else. So to me, a 5 out of 10, it's just middle of the road. It wasn't necessarily good, but wasn't necessarily bad for me. It was just it was a mixed bag. That's what the kiddos call it mid. So yeah, that's my whole thing. But it is funny when I look at a lot of my favorite critics, I tend to give it to similar scores, but there's other times where I don't. For example, Red Letter Media, they're like one of my favorite YouTube channels. They're very high on this movie. They loved it, and good for them. But I still liked listening to different perspectives, especially some of my favorite critics. But this time I just didn't agree, so.
Moving right along, let's talk some Spider-Man. Brand new day. It's a brand new day in the MCU. This movie was my most anticipated film of the year, and I'd say it didn't disappoint. We got the 38th movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We still going strong, Jared? We still excited for some more Marvel?
I want to watch Doomsday so bad.
No, fuck that movie. But on the real, though, like, Tom Holland's Spider-Man has been on a crazy ride, on an insane ride. We have 3 movies that took place when the MCU was, let's just say, in better conditions. And 3 movies that kind of worked backwards as an origin story, where after it was all wrapped up, Feige and the rest and half the internet was like, no, guys, this was the real origin story. They were just setting him up to be the original Spider-Man the entire time. Spending 3 movies and, I don't know, 8.5 hours of film time doing what the other 2 Spider-Man franchises did in 20 minutes. Not a great plan.
Also, including 3 Avengers films as well.
Including 3 Avengers films. But regardless, all that shit aside, we're finally arrived to Spider-Man Brand New Day. Peter's down. He's in the dumps. He's depressed. He's alone. The whole world's forgot about him. He is no-lifing this superhero shit. And then mind palpitations and scorpions and random crime and depression and raging spider hormones. All these things are happening to him at once. This was a jam-packed movie, but I really loved it.
That's awesome, man. I'm very happy for you. For me, all those, compelling, dramatic things aside, redhead.
Sadie Sink is indeed in the movie, and she is factually playing a redhead. She's not playing one. She is redheaded. She's a redhead, and she's in the movie.
Genetics,
and there's been so much mystery surrounding her character. Ooh, who does she play? If somehow you are listening to this video in the year of our Lord 2026, and you've made it 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks into the biggest movie of the year so far, and you do not know who Sadie Sink plays, bless your heart. We're not going to spoil it for you right now. We're going to have a dedicated spoiler section, but there's a lot other shit to talk about. I think this is a Spider-Man movie made by fans of the character, for fans of the character, and there's a lot of justice to the true essence of him that they do in this film. There's plenty to like.
Yeah, we're, obviously after the events of No Way Home, we're put in an interesting spot narratively with Tom Holland's iteration of the character. Me, and like many others, I was kind of mixed, largely disappointed with the routes they took with the character entering the MCU. I felt like he started off really strong with Civil War. Like, that was a great introduction. Obviously, it might have felt a little forced throwing him into this giant Civil War airport fight, but by and large, it felt like the character that we all know and love. And then we get into his solo films, and, like, I could get into some aspects of this new version, but other aspects I felt rather distant, mainly being the Tony Stark, Iron Man angle. Like, it's been, very apparent that a lot of people, including myself, just weren't a fan of the direction they took when it comes to adding him into that Spider-Man story. Having him as that, like, some may say it, that Uncle Ben leadership role, that mentor figure. It was a different change of pace, and so I was kind of looking forward to the day when Tony Stark wasn't in a Spider-Man movie, or wasn't mentioned, or just didn't have like his blueprints all over the movie. And so when we get to here, we're finally seeing a Spider-Man hanging out in New York, helping out the little guys and just doing his best to wrap up crime in the city. It was refreshing that this first half hour did a great job of establishing what Spider-Man is like in the current MCU and how he goes about getting things done, truthfully. And it was refreshing. It was just nice to like see this like more down to earth version of him, where he's just kind of doing his best to be that friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and that's what we all know and love. So on that note, yeah, I really had a good time with this. On a script level, I had a lot of frustrations with it, but when it comes to just pure enjoyment, it's hard for me to just outwardly dislike a Spider-Man movie. And so on that note, I just had a really good time. So yeah, script issues aside, this was a really fun movie. And yeah, we'll start to get into logistics of it. But overall, when it comes to just the vibes and just seeing this more down-to-earth version of him that is trying the best to just put one foot in front of the other and just, make the most of his unfortunate situation, it had me pretty engaged, to say the least.
Yeah, this movie feels like an apology tour in the best possible ways. I was joking with you that an alternate title of this film is Spider-Man, We're Sorry. We are just trying to course correct so many of the things. Tom Holland is on record saying he watched YouTube videos, listened to podcasts, did a deep dive into the internet to see what the Spider-Man fans wanted, and you can see that in the final product of the movie. Oh, you're tired of having my Spider-Man suit completely drenched in ugly-ass CGI? Well, okay, we're sorry. Here's a gorgeous cloth fabric suit, the best looking Spider-Man suit in live action we've ever had. Absolutely dripping, drop dead gorgeous Spider-Man suit. Here's practical effects. Here is shot on location action sequences with real choreography, real stunt work. Here is, you're tired of these bullshit multiversal shenanigans? We're sorry. Here is a relatively grounded, street-level Spider-Man story where he is swinging, saving people in New York, down on his luck, pure Spider-Man mythos. We're so tired of him having just this complete reliance on Tony Stark and the larger MCU as a whole. Now we're really sorry because we have a lot of MCU shit we need to set up, and also this does take place in the larger MCU. There are a lot of cooks in the kitchen story-wise, but at its core, at its heart, this is a Peter-focused story about loneliness and learning to ask for help and not shouldering all the pressure and all the weight of the world on your own shoulders.
Yeah, that was, one of my favorite aspects of the story. It was just seeing this guy, our favorite neighborhood Spider-Man, just, put himself in a box, right? Put himself in isolation, something that a lot of people, a lot of men, a lot of women, a lot of just people in general can relate to right now. We're very quick to, when things get tough, to just shut ourselves down, to hide in our cozy little apartment, in our house or whatnot, and opt to just disassociate, doom scroll. There's if that's an aspect I quite enjoy, was just seeing this modern version of Spider-Man feel so relatable. I feel like a lot of us can relate to Peter in the sense of, oh man, my life sucks right now. Might as well. I mean, whatever. I'll just kill some time. Just scrolling on my phone for God knows how long, and what starts off as just like some cute little, let's just disassociate for a minute. A minute turns to 10 minutes, turns to 15, 20, etc. Hours, days, years go by, and we're seeing this Peter. We're picking up with him 4 or so years later. It's never explicitly told, but it's implied through him viewing Ned and MJ's Instagram stories, or a story of that nature, where they're updating us as far as where they're at when it comes to school. Most college curriculums end in about 4 to 5 years, so it's around that time frame. I guess it could be earlier as well, but point is, he's just kind of been in a rut, right, where it's just kind of doing the same things every day, and naturally his mental well-being isn't going to be as sharp as it was when he was a happy-go-lucky kid. He's got the Avengers to help him out. He's got Tony. He's got the Stark suit, his friends in high school. No responsibilities, or not as many responsibilities, right? Like, obviously he still went through some stuff, but a big reason a lot of people, including myself, felt so distant was that lack of responsibility, right? That's a huge aspect when it comes to that character. And with this film, it felt more apparent, right? Not just it felt that, it was shown to us, right? Like, there's an awesome montage in the beginning of the film where it's showing him replicating a lot of awesome, iconic comic book covers, and you're seeing him defeat a ton of awesome, memorable comic characters that are brought to life for just a second. So maybe not super memorable, but they're memorable enough just due to the iconography. Someone like Scorpion and Tombstone, they have their fun little cameo. Scorpion obviously has, if you've seen it, has more of a effect on the story, but most of those early montage characters are just there for a second, and that's great. It serves a point in the story of just showing that Peter's focus right now is on Spider-Man, right? And on that note, he's doing great. He's in connection with this new police chief, a character I'm not too familiar with, but as far as the actress goes, I first came across her on The Bear, and I love her. Yeah, she's so warm, and there's a bit of like protection angle there where she just kind of wants to see this kid, this young adult. She wants to see the best for him. She's got some kids of her own. They'll ask about Spider-Man, and she's always asking questions as far as how he's doing, and she's trying to be that motherly figure to him as well, even if she's not gonna be there for him on a personal level. As far as the Peter angle, she's trying to get through to that Peter angle through Spider-Man, and I really like that angle.
New York is an actual character again in these movies. That's something I noticed, especially my second time around watching it. There's so many little cute, fun moments with the extras in this movie, extras that just get one little moment, one little line. There was a viral tweet talking about the black dude that the villain controls. Like, you know exactly what I mean. He's just like this dude walking on the street. Spider-Man just had a gadget mishap, and he's like, "Yo, Spider-Man, what you doing, man? Like, what's up?" And this dude, whatever the hell his name is, right? Like, extra number 6 that the villain like mind controls for a second. Dude is eating up his 3 minutes of screen time, bro. He is like, this is my moment in the spotlight, and it's just a great scene. But yeah, like, New York's an actual character again. This feels grounded. This feels generally street level. I absolutely adore the end credit montage. Instead of a zany comic book graphics, instead of a triumphant final swing, we get a really down to earth just montage of New York and just people living their everyday lives to an upbeat Steve Lacy song. It's very, very heartfelt in the best possible way.
Well, yeah, I mean the I feel like by and large the most important aspect when it comes to the Spider-Man character is his relatability, right? That end montage you just brought up, I feel like really reinforces the best aspects of Spider-Man and Peter as a character. Is just he's so, down to earth. He's such a relatable guy where he's just trying to do his best to, you know, you know, provide for himself, the people he loves, and be a shining beacon of hope for the city of New York. And when you see that final, end credit montage of just a bunch of awesome vistas and people, just going about their day to day lives, it's warm, it's refreshing. It's just like it's just nice to feel good and watch like someone try their best amidst the chaos known as our everyday lives, And so I felt like that montage. I know we're getting to the end, but this is just obviously just a credit montage at the end. It really does a good job bringing it together as far as what this character means to people and the kind of impact these larger than life fictional characters can have on us. So yeah, no, when it comes to the city of New York feeling like a character again, I felt that more than I guess some previous iterations, but I hate to compare, but it just doesn't hold a candle to like the original Raimi films, something that me and you both hold dear to our hearts. So like, while I can acknowledge like there is some more life in this movie than I've seen in some previous Marvel movies, I'm still like longing for like just something else to grab onto. Like, I don't know. For me, sure, I've seen the movies a billion times, but like, I don't know. I feel like if I were to watch those movies for the first time to get today, there's still plenty of those extra characters that have maybe a line or two, or maybe none. Maybe just have a fleeting glance that I would remember because they stand out more. I don't know, due to the writing or direction. I feel like those extra characters that just don't really have an impact on the story, but they do because they feel just personal, right? Like everyone's got their own perspective. They all got their own unique look. And I felt like, yeah, while I can feel that sometimes, I also felt like, all right, like outside of the main crew, it still felt like, okay, this is the main crew. Occasionally you'll get like a cute scene with like some kid that Spider-Man like, he pats him on the back and he says, all right, go, stay off the street. But like, I don't know. I'm still like, I'm still holding on to that nostalgia of that tangible city that I know is possible from some of the previous entries. So like, yeah, it's the right steps, but I still feel like they can go a step and beyond when it comes to making the city more alive.
Yeah, it's definitely a step in the right direction. I think something I really enjoyed, MCU aside, superhero genre movie aside, is just how I feel like it's a really respectable movie on its own merits. Like the actual filmmaking, they're mostly shooting on location. There's real choreographed stunts. He has a real costume that's not frequently drenched in CGI. There's a very tactile feel to the depth of field and all the choices behind the camera. The camera work is very alive. The cinematography, the scenes, the blocking, the writing, acting. It's just a well-made movie, in my opinion, that I can respect on a even-headed, level ground, as opposed to, is this great as a Spider-Man movie? Is this good as a superhero movie? Like, there was actual attention to detail in the filmmaking and just the bare bones and structure of the movie. It's very well directed. Destin Daniel Cretton, what an excellent choice. Coming off of working with Marvel for Shang-Chi and Wonder Man, what an excellent choice to helm a character like Spider-Man. Like, he really cares about the characters in his movies. He's a very humble and emotionally grounded filmmaker. So I'm really glad they chose him to helm a project like this.
Yeah, I wanted to get more of a feel for him, so I actually dove into Wonder Man before this new movie, and I'm so glad I did because I still need to rewatch Shang-Chi. But I wasn't like super high on it. I can acknowledge like he did a great job when helming some of the action set pieces, but on a story level, it was all right, but it didn't have me like, it didn't give me a lasting impression as far as what the story wanted to leave me with. But I saw Wonder Man, and I really loved that show. I really found the characters to be quite engaging, and this wannabe actor, trying to make his way in the big city. It was a compelling story. It did a good job of, getting you invested. So seeing that down to earth approach with those characters in that show, I had a good feeling like this was a competent guy for the job, and I can safely say that, yeah, no, I am quite happy with the new choice when it comes to direction. Obviously, a lot of Marvel fans, a lot of Spider-Man fans will tell you that John Watts has not got the sauce.
He's not that guy.
He's not. Like he made, I guess he made competent movies, right? But for me, like that's not enough, right? Like you have this huge budget at your disposal. Let's get weird with it. Let's get creative. Like it's a comic book, right? Let's put some life into it. Let's put some energy. And there's definitely some personality and energy here, right? Where, yeah, it's not as bombastic as the Raimi films, and sure, I do miss that aspect, but I can acknowledge, like, no, there's a genuine attempt at, filmmaking. Sure, it's craftsmanship, heart. I longed for that when it comes to these kind of stories. I long for a more grounded approach when it comes to what the characters are going through, right? And so on that note, I really liked it. And an aspect that I wasn't expecting to like as much was the inclusion, or the re-inclusion, I guess. It sounds a little weird saying that, but of MJ and Ned. When I say re-inclusion, I guess this is more from a perspective of someone that wishfully, maybe not anymore, but wishfully at the time, I was wishing that they weren't in this movie at all. I thought maybe we could take a break from them and have them return in the next one and have him meet up with some new characters from the larger Spider-Man mythos. And truthfully, I still would love for some of the larger characters to show up in his universe. But alas, what we were given was, a return of these characters, and with these characters brought some new, sense of drama, sense of conflict within the relationships that used to be, a staple of these movies. But now, due to the misfortunate events of the last film, things are just not the same anymore, unfortunately. Obviously I'm sure everyone's seen it, so I'm going to spoil it, but Doctor Strange, obviously, with Spider-Man, came to the conclusion that, all right, we got to just have nobody know who Spider-Man is. So now nobody knows, and so therefore his love of his life and his best friend don't know. So when we catch up with him in the present, he obviously isn't really talking to them anymore because of what happened. But one day later, or a couple days later into the film, Peter's just in a random, convenience store, and lo and behold, Ned shows up. And you know what, Peter, just like any normal person that hasn't seen someone in a while, he'd be doing some stalking, and so he kind of follows him to see what he's up to, just out of mere curiosity. And he follows him home, and eventually he runs into them in a more of a personal manner, and eventually they start talking. And then after that, the ball gets rolling, and you get to see where they're at personally. They're obviously, like I alluded to earlier, they're about to graduate. Peter now sees that MJ has had a new boyfriend, and this obviously impacts anyone, right? Anyone can relate to the idea of seeing someone that you used to date, or you currently have a crush or an affection for, and longing to be with them, but obviously due to their current predicament, you're not able to have them. And so that just affects him. And seeing where that goes from there, and seeing how Spider-Man factors into their life now via not being a personal, companion, and just kind of being just the friendly neighborhood, and seeing how he interacts with them in the Spider-Man persona, it's an interesting dynamic that I really liked the direction it took.
Yeah, MJ and Ned are much better in this one. I've always enjoyed Jacob Batalon in bits and pieces in these movies. Zendaya has been really flat with no fault of her own. um, she was just MJ. This version of MJ in these last Tom Holland movies have just been such a nothing burger of a character. But here in Brand New Day, she's excellent. She feels like a real person. She feels her performance has much more dimension and depth to it. You feel all those different emotional beats come through really strongly. The conversations she has with Peter throughout the movie, definitely the emotional highlights, some highlights, I would say. Yeah, there's just the cast overall is really strong. Tom Holland, yeah, dude, he's Spider-Man, bro. Like, the Raimi movies will always be the cream of the crop, irreplaceable experiences. I'm always going to be a Toby truther, but Tom has been playing this character for 10 years now. Like, he could do this shit in his sleep. He's hit such an amazing stride with this character. You can just seeing him grow up in the role and becoming better and better the longer he does it. He brings just such a groundedness and maturity to this character, and the material finally elevates to meet him in a place that demands more of him as an actor, and he rises to the occasion. It was really good to see that. Bernthal's in it again. He's having quite the summer. Brings it back as Punisher and Frank Castle. I wasn't expecting the comedic highlights of this movie to be John Bernthal as Punisher, and specifically the back and forth he has with Peter. As far as the larger Marvel universe goes, this is the most I've As far as the larger universe goes, this is the most I've liked Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner in a long time. This is the most I've liked Hulk in a long ass time. I mean, like 11 years, Age of Ultron, like Savage Hulk, Scary Hulk. Like, the Hulk is a destructive force and you should be scared of him. Kudos to this movie for bringing that back. I love the laid back and gentleness Ruffalo plays Banner with when he's interacting with Peter. Just finally finding, a young protege and someone who can meet his mind scientifically to kind of steer in the right direction, realizing there's more to this kid than he's letting on, and I can relate to that as someone with dual identities myself. I loved Ruffalo and the short scenes he got. So yeah, and Sadie Sink plays a very compelling antagonist as well. We'll dive more into her character in the spoiler section. Something we haven't talked about yet is just how much inspiration this movie takes and how many homages there are to both the Insomniac games and the Raimi movies and some of the web stuff and all the predecessors. I had a mixed feelings about all the homages. Sometimes it felt like it fit hand in glove with the story they were going for. Other times it felt like just kind of reheated nachos, like we are playing the beats of what you would expect in a Spider-Man movie. An example of where I thought it worked was just like the tone of where the story was so far when he sees MJ have a boyfriend already and then he starts swinging away in the rain. I was like, this is very Spider-Man 2 vibes, you know what I mean? Like, this is Parker Luck, as soon as you think shit's going bad, it can always get worse. I like that. But as far as, the rediscovering of his powers when he's like on the rooftop and he's like, okay, I got to figure out this organic web stuff. And he tries out like different catchphrases and ways to make the web come out. I'm like, okay, this is more Raimi. And then he shares a kiss with MJ a little bit later that starts to initially, before they do a really good twist, it's more Raimi. And then sometimes I felt like it went a little far with the homages, and it felt like, as someone that, the Raimi movies are some of my favorites ever and have watched them countless times, sometimes it just felt a little tired how many times they felt like they needed to replay some of those beats.
Yeah, it's obviously familiar, so I can understand the appeal as a filmmaker to return and reference some of the more iconic moments of Spider-Man media. And on that note, I think inherently when you're so many films deep into his cinematic tenure of any kind of character, but we're talking about Spider-Man in this instance. And yeah, so naturally when you're this many films deep, there is going to be a little bit of repetition, right? Inherently. But sometimes I don't know, it goes, a step too far in some places when it just feels like, okay, I get it, but what's your spin on it, right? I personally don't mind, retreading some old ground, but it's, for me at least, I hope that they have their own unique spin or perspective on something that we're familiar with. And in this instance, I don't know if I always felt that. Sometimes it did feel like it was just kind of doing the same storyline again. But I don't know. When it comes to a new aspect of this story, I guess we have Peter struggling with his hormones. They're spiking when it comes to the spider side of things. So he'll pass out at random and wake up in a web cocoon. And he's, the spider persona is affecting him more, right? He doesn't know how to control the webs. And so on that note, it felt very akin to something like Spider-Man 2, right? Where Peter is trying to balance all the personal problems with Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is losing his edge because of that. And so, yeah, I don't mind retreading that ground because it is one of my favorite stories when it comes to the cinematic tenure of Spider-Man. But I just kind of wished, I don't know, I kind of wish they went all the way. I know that in the comics, he, as in Spider-Man, goes full like body horror movie monster-esque character where like he becomes the man spider, and I kind of wish it went to that level. And I just feel like it comes down to like a studio thing where they don't want their friendly neighborhood Spider-Man movie that's trying to appeal to all audiences to have a grotesque like horror Spider-Man character show up for a scene or two. So maybe that's just my headcanon as far as why they didn't go all the way. But I don't know. It was weird that like they bring up this concept and it felt like the movie kind of like forgot about it sometimes. Like it felt random when it would show up again. I felt like once we got to the end, it came full circle, and I think it hit for the most part for me. But when it first was introduced and some of the moments in between before getting to the finale, it felt like it kind of got lost in the overall plot.
Yeah, I overall just really mesh with how much more grown up and, occasionally somber the movie can feel, especially in that first third. Michael Giacchino's score is immaculate. I tuned in so much more on the second time. Obviously, the music of the film goes a long way to dictating the tone, and in that opening montage, the opening credits, just really taking that Spider-Man MCU motif, just the soft piano renditions of it, really just easing you back into the world and Peter's headspace. I loved. And I really wish the movie carried that tone throughout the entire runtime. This is the longest Spider-Man live-action film. I believe it's about 2 hours, 25 minutes. You can definitely feel the runtime at different points in the movie. I wish the movie was just solely focused on Peter for a majority of it, over half of it. And it's not like Peter loses too much focus, but there is a very distinct turning point towards the end of the second act of the movie where it focuses on Sadie Sink as the antagonist, her motivations, and just the implications of her character within the larger MCU going forward. That's where the script kind of loses a little bit of ground. I think definitely from a pacing perspective, at least. I like her character. I like her motivations, but especially on a rewatch going into it when it starts on the Peter stuff, and that's definitely material you could carry out throughout the entire movie, and you're watching it the second time like this becomes a very different movie towards the end. It kind of takes you out of it like, damn, this kind of feels like two different movies here. I wish there was a cleaner transition between the two.
I definitely felt that where like I came around, especially we both have seen it twice now. I came around to this character being in the film and what her motives were. I think by and large they work. Some of the choices I have conflict with, which we'll get into soon with spoilers, but overall I was just like, okay, I'm warming up to her, especially on rewatch. But it definitely felt like it shifted gears when it comes to the storytelling and how Peter was, intertwined into that dynamic. And for a big chunk of the third act, it felt more of a movie about her than Peter. And then, like, there's a awesome moment where it reminds you, like, no, this is Spider-Man's movie. She just so happens to have a big role in it. And I think overall their dynamic worked. And so on that note, yeah, I am coming around to her character and her inclusion in the film. And something you brought up earlier when it comes to the runtime, while it is the longest, I truthfully didn't. I guess there's moments I felt it, but overall, I think it justified the runtime, especially with the amount of stuff is in the film. That being said, I don't know, like, it's a weird film where, like, I could see it being a little shorter, but I could also see it being a little longer. Some aspects that I kind of think would have added to the film personally is more of a dynamic between Bruce Banner and Peter Parker. You have one scene with those two before the Hulk shows up, and from the Hulk's perspective, I agree as far as finally feeling the fear in the Hulk again, something that I haven't felt and many haven't felt since like the second Avengers, Age of Ultron, and truthfully, I still had problems with that version of the Hulk. I haven't felt the fear factor since something like the original Avengers, right? Like that iconic scene where he's chasing Black Widow down a hall, like that still to me is like the most iconic, like Hulk rage fear factor. And then obviously you had Thor saving the day. It's a very iconic moment, right? So I just felt like in this film, when it comes to the Bruce Hulk dynamic, while I did like the Hulk payoff overall, it was a fun action beat, and I liked how it ended, and especially when Punisher got involved, that was quite fun as well. A lot of the humor there really landed for me. I love their chemistry, being Peter, Spider-Man, and the Punisher. They're really fun together. Very like fun, like buddy cop duo. When it comes to Bruce and Peter's relationship, I just think it's a byproduct of the MCU. But if it's if they're gonna have this relationship in the movie, I feel like they could have spent more time together, right? Obviously, I don't think they need a crazy amount of screen time, but I think one extra scene could have gone a long ways when it comes to making me feel more for their dynamic. And that's not necessarily a highlight, but there's a crucial moment at the end of the Hulk fight where Peter connects to the Hulk on more of a personal, emotional level, and it works well enough. Truthfully, like it's fine. It's serviceable. It's not like I roll my eyes of like, wow, like that. I didn't call bullshit necessarily, but more so, I felt like if there was a little bit more of the relationship, I would have felt it even more. I would have liked that personally.
Overall, I think this movie is a really good return to form for the character. I really enjoyed the action sequences, the one versus the Hulk that you were just talking about. Awesome. Lived up to standard. The prison fight sequence with the hand at the end, definitely one of the stronger MCU action sequences. Tom Holland's awesome as this character. I really hope he gets a new standalone trilogy with Destin Daniel Cretton at the helm. It was just all overall fun. It definitely made me remember just so many things I love about this character. So I'd overall give it an 8 out of 10.
Cool. Yeah. Before we get into spoilers, might as well give the scores. I would give it I'd still give it a 6 out of 10.
For sure. I guess as far as nitpicks and things like that can easily be discussed a little bit more leniently in the spoiler section. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Sony did that thing I fucking hate where they show so much of the movie in the trailers. Like, oh my god, I thought we were good. I thought we were past this, but Sony just can't freaking get past this. I'm watching this movie for the first time, right? And when we see that those like iconic comic book cover shots of Spider-Man kicking ass in the city was in the first 10, 20 minutes, I thought, oh, we're good. Like, I actually don't know what the hell to expect in this movie. We're actually all right. But then as the movie goes and goes, I'm starting to stitch together the story in my head based on trailer footage and just the sequence of events, and I'm like, God damn it. They, even despite trying to be so secretive, they gave all this shit away. What pisses me off the most is that prison fight sequence at the end. They basically showed that entire sequence in the trailers. Like, a good 70% of it is shown in the trailers. Especially that like web cyclone finishing move he does when he jumps from the top of the ceiling to the ground, and that's how he ends the action fight scene. Dude, baller ass move. So cool. Why would you show that in the trailers? Sony, fix your goddamn marketing team.
Yeah, that's a Sony move. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've been indulging in some Spider-Man media for a minute now. For me, I didn't get fully locked into like the movie news sphere, trailer, news, dropping and all that mumbo jumbo that goes into this. But I first caught a glimpse of Sony's marketing habits with the original, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. That's actually a lie. The original is The Amazing Spider-Man 1. But as far as the original kind of marketing that I associate with Sony nowadays, so yes, I am all too familiar with the way Sony markets their movies. And that being said, do I still continue to watch all these trailers? You're damn right. It's hard for me to stay away. There's been years I do a better job than others, but nah, this time they got me, and it's unfortunate because yeah, they showed like a ton of the movie, and it sucks because like it'd be one thing if it was just a bunch of stills of all the main characters, but no, it's a majority of the money shots, right? So yeah, it sucks. There's no other way of putting it.
The biggest secret, of course, wrapping around the movie's marketing was the mystery behind who is Sadie Sink playing, and everyone, trailers, no trailers, casting a young redhead, very popular actress, knowing the X-Men are on the horizon in the MCU. Everyone was like, I think it's probably Jean. And yeah, surprise, surprise, it was Jean. And that just made me laugh so hard when we're watching it opening day and they revealed the name and everyone goes, oh my God, and starts clapping. Like,
not to everybody, because you gotta remember, there's so many people that they just don't follow this stuff like we do.
Yeah. It was just, if you're not chronically online as a Marvel fan, this could have been a huge surprise. It was not for us. That was, surprises aside, once the movie just kind of takes a turn when she takes over, and we see the backstory with her sister, with not Trask, that's a different character, Metzger, head of damage control, capturing her sister, experimenting on her, trying to replicate her powers, kills her. Jean is looking for her. That's the main motivation. Although I like the flashback, I like these actresses, I think it was handled well when you're trying to do the impossible task of having a grounded street-level Spider-Man story and also introduce the X-Men into the MCU fully. I think they pulled it off really smoothly, all things considered. However, it does make the movie feel very long and very busy when it doesn't need to. I think to the movie's credit, having Punisher and Hulk and Jean in the same movie, it overall does feel organic. It overall does feel like they would naturally exist in this universe and they would be relevant to a story like this. You need a street level, straight man to bounce off of Spider-Man. Yeah, throw in the Punisher in there. Him and Spidey have a ton of comic book history. The Punisher first appeared in a Spider-Man comic. yeah, Peter's going through all these hormonal changes with his DNA. He should go to Dr. Banner. Yes, of course. He knows him. That makes sense. You know, a telepath is fucking up New York. It's probably Jean Grey, a very young Jean Grey that hasn't found Charles Xavier yet. You know, these all feel like very organic inclusions of the wider Marvel universe. So I think it was handled well in that retrospect. I like how they did the body swapping, the body hopping thing, like just the physical choreography with that was really entertaining to see. You got a lot of different performances from the extras while they were being controlled. My favorite of which, not an extra, but my favorite of which being Zendaya as Mary Jane. You know, that turn when she fools him and she kisses him and she just taunts him like, oh man, I could see why you like her. This is what you wanted to hear all this time. You know, such a fucked up moment on so many levels. And Zendaya played that scene expertly. I really liked Jean's inclusion overall. I really liked the connection she had to Peter, just to, you know, lost souls that have more power than they know what to deal with and just feel so alone in the world. Tying back Aunt May, that flashback with Aunt May to the current scenario and having him talk her down through May's advice was really well done in my opinion, because it also helps bridge the gap between Homecoming and Far From Home, where Homecoming ends with her Aunt May discovering his identity, and then Far From Home she's just cool with it off screen all of a sudden. Always been such a jarring move, but having that scene between them really helped bridge that gap as well. So I thought that was a really good tidbit of world building and resolution between the characters.
Yeah, that was when you brought up, balancing all these, larger than life MCU characters and putting them in the sandbox of a Spider-Man film or just any MCU film in general. For me, there's always a concern as far as how they're going to balance it all. And I was actually really surprised, especially on rewatch, how well balanced it all was. It really didn't feel as forced as I thought it would. The closest it felt to getting that way is someone that you didn't mention, which was Yelena. I forgot her last name, but the new Black Widow. She's got this hot tub as far as her office goes, and Peter has to get shirtless and hang out with her, and she gives him some advice, some exposition as far as what damage control is. I don't know if I'm remembering the scene perfectly, but point is, that was the closest it felt to being forced. But she shows up again, and she adds some good world building as far as what the current state of the MCU is. So I've warmed up to her appearances, but that was probably the closest it felt for me as far as being like a forced like cameo. But overall, she still is a necessary character in the narrative, so I can't fault her too much. Just some of the writing could have been better. But as far as the Punisher, Hulk, and Jean all serve their purpose. The Punisher, like I said earlier, I could see a whole movie of Spidey and Punisher teaming up. I love their banter. There's this awesome shot where it cuts to a camera and it's recording them, and it's just a visual of like them bickering, and just their hand movements alone was really funny to me. I quite enjoyed that. Hulk, I thought it would be just a very just blatant, oh, let's put the Hulk in there, that'd be fun. And like, it is fun. It was great seeing him in the movie, but it, by and large, to me, it felt like it served a purpose. I think people have brought it up online, including myself. I've talked to Pac in person, over a phone, where I was like, I think they could have maybe brought in Lizard. And sure, I think that character could have maybe potentially worked in Hulk's spot, but you also would have to build that relationship more. And so, like, yeah, that could have been cool, but also Hulk is already an established character within the MCU. Peter, I think this is his first time talking to him, but he at least knows of his existence, right? Peter's not currently enrolled, so this is just like a great way of being like, okay, like this is the guy he would go to, right? It's, this is someone that he can potentially relate to. So I quite like that. And then we get to Jean. I'm still, I will say this. I've warmed up to her being the movie. I'm okay with her being the antagonist. obviously it's a big departure from the Jean have grown up with. That being said, I've never been huge on Jean. I love the X-Men as a whole, but to me, she's always been the very just obvious girl team character, where she's the love interest. She's in the love triangle, but other than that, like, she's not the most compelling character in my opinion, outside of like the Phoenix storyline where she takes a darker turn. But other than that, she's just kind of been all right. So I don't necessarily mind this departure and seeing this younger version of her. I was very intrigued on the route they took, and overall, I enjoyed it. There is some times where like I don't necessarily agree with how it was resolved, as far as Peter just kind of, for me, just felt like he forgave her too easily as far as her deeds when it comes to the way she would go about using her powers. She's very reckless with them, and yeah, obviously I can understand why she is, right? She's like a angsty, emotional teenager that is going through a rough time. She has been in and out of foster homes. Her mom doesn't love her and her sister like normal kids do, so it makes sense why she's so reckless. But just the fact that like Peter just, I don't know, I just felt it could have been potentially written better. Like, I don't necessarily mind that he eventually, sees past, the damage that she has done and does forgive her. But I just felt like maybe it could have been wrapped up better. And just, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe future films can, teach her more responsibility in that kind of fashion.
Yeah, because again, this is definitely a version of the character that is younger and has not met Charles Xavier yet. There's a lot of people clowning the "You're not a killer" line. That's really funny and very clunky in context of the movie. Technically, if you want to be most technical, we never explicitly saw her kill anyone. The closest we saw her do that is take control of the guy. She's taunting Peter. She walks backwards into traffic with him. He gets hit by a car. And there's no shot after that to confirm if he's just injured really bad, if he's dead, like what happened to the dude. So that's unconfirmed. And then she takes control of MJ and then just jumps off the building with her to really push Peter towards the edge, but definitely knew she'd save him. So it's not like, I see where they were coming from with the, yeah, maybe you haven't explicitly killed the guy, and now she has motive with Metzger to kill her because that's her tormentor. And yeah, it makes sense, but it just comes across really clunkily on the page, because obviously she's reckless enough and has motive enough to kill, but killing your tormentor and the guy that's killed your sister and has locked you up in this place, it very much, just like a cold blood murder, would send you down a path that would be really hard to walk away from and would definitely alter your brain chemistry, just alter the complete trajectory of your life. I think that's a much harder decision. Like, actively, even if you do have a motive as strong as Jean had, actively killing someone in cold blood like that, I think she understood the weight of that decision, and that's why she hesitated long enough, deliberated long enough for Peter to get there in time and ultimately stop her. So it's a really messy line on paper, but as far as I understood the heart of it, where they were coming from. Could have been better, but yeah.
Yeah, no, the way you frame it, I've already had similar thoughts as far as being like, you know what, like, it's a little clunky, but overall, like, I got caught up in the emotions I felt for her. I think it could have been handled better, but overall, like, I was satisfied with the resolve of the scene. And yeah, you can look past it if you want, but overall, I was happy about it. And that's all you can do, right? Like, you can just accept it for what it is and recognize that maybe it could have been written better, but overall, I did enjoy that moment. And yeah, it was interesting to see her in this light. A big part of me obviously is going to think about the idea of like, okay, they're having her as the antagonist to just set up the X-Men. And while it could have felt that way, it didn't really, it could have had the the key jingling, like the X-Men theme, and showing the big mansion in the distance and stuff like that. But they didn't. They were holding off. And recently, I came across an interview with Destin Daniel Cretton where he was saying that that this was his choice to have this character in the film. It seems like he wanted, for the first time in a live action Spider-Man film, he wanted Peter to go up against someone that was closer to his age, someone he could more closely relate to, that younger, angsty perspective. And you know what? I kind of like that approach. It's a different antagonist from what we're used to when it comes to Spider-Man media as far as live action goes. And you know what? Like, call it what it is. Like, obviously, it is setting up the X-Men, but as far as an antagonist, I think she worked well enough. I think she could have been better, but overall, I was satisfied with the direction they took. Just wish they could have been cleaned up a little more when it comes to the screenplay. Because, like, for me, just because it's not visibly shown that if she killed someone or not, to me, that doesn't necessarily just scratch off all the bad things she's done, such as, like, the opening when she's in the tank. Like, to me, it takes a lot of, like, I don't know, it takes a lot of goodwill for me as an audience to be like, oh, all the gunshots she's firing, she just knew that no one was around. And, like, sure, like, I know Jean is insanely powerful, but I just don't like, as an audience, for me to suspend my disbelief that much when it comes to the character's nefarious activities, and why it might ring hollow for a lot of people when Peter does have that line. So,
what the hell are you doing? You could have killed someone. He has no problem coming down hard on Frank for doing the same shit. But, he knows his place when it's someone so much more powerful. You don't want to just, like, it's not Spider-Man-like to just beat the shit out of her and lock her away somewhere and, forget about it. He definitely wants to level with, his villains whenever he can. I think it definitely speaks to the attention to detail when it comes to the characters and just both the overall maturity to the film. When I realized my favorite sequences in the movie are just when two characters are having a moment together, like Peter and Frank in the hospital after he takes the bullet for her. Great scene. When him and Aunt May are talking, when him and Jean have that moment, especially when him, MJ, and Ned have that moment in their apartment together after MJ, rips his heart out, tells him she doesn't love him, she doesn't remember him, and he still has the decency to expect nothing in return and still take her home, make sure she gets home safe. And she invites him up to say hi to Ned, and they just bond over Legos and Lord of the Rings quotes, and he's just like, man, this is the most fun I've had in years. I miss you guys. Just the visual of Spider-Man in this gorgeous suit, just playing with Legos and Rubik's Cubes and stuff like that, and just having this really normal human moment was just so beautiful to me. I love when superheroes have these mundane real life moments. It just makes them feel so real. I love the transparency with the lenses on the mask that you can see Peter's eyes for so many different shots of the movie. It just really, and that's what, they really focused in on when he was talking down the Hulk, like, I'm your friend. Moments like that where I'm just like, dude, this movie gets Spider-Man. At the end of the day, the heart of the character is here, and I really like what they did with it.
Thank you for reminding me of that awesome scene in their apartment. If y'all who are listening don't know, I love Lego. I collect Lego. It's one of my favorite hobbies, one of my favorite passions I've had as a wee lad. So naturally, seeing one of my favorite fictional characters on the big screen building Lego with his buddies, it was such a wholesome, down-to-earth Spider-Man moment that is something that you're not going to be able to see with different superheroes. And that's something I've always appreciated about the character of Spider-Man, right? The down-to-earth, relatable factor that I always come back to. And so it just really felt like, it reaffirmed the idea of like, anyone can be Spider-Man, anyone can be a hero, but also any hero needs time to just sit back and just build some Lego with the boys and girls, and just have a good time, share some laughs, share some love, and share some awesome Lord of the Rings quotes. Our good buddy looked at me when that quote popped up because he knows that I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. It's my favorite film series of all time. So I'm like, oh wow, like it felt like the scene was made for me. Truthfully, that's what was so funny about it.
Yeah, for sure. It was a really fun movie. I'm glad I watched it. What got me overall super emotional the second time was Peter leaving the hospital and having the crowd of New Yorkers, with signs and balloons and costume up, like cheering for Spider-Man. That moment hit me really hard the second time. It's just such a beautiful moment, it echoes stuff like Spider-Verse, the crowd, just the idea, just really honing on the Spider-Man character as an icon and what that means to people. I love that. Tom Holland, as he's just weaving through the crowd and just taking it all in, you can really see on his face how much the character means to him and how grateful he is to be a part of that. The simple exchange he shares with the kid, that he looks at and does the web whip to, moments like that were just so freaking cool. I really loved that because Tom is the longest tenured Spider-Man at this point. He's been playing this character for 10 years. He really knows his stuff. It's moments like that that just, really highlights, yeah, this movie was made for the fans. Like, this is them in a meta sort of sense, directly acknowledging the fans and saying thank you. And that just really made that moment land for me.
Yeah, you feel the heart. It was a good time. I'm excited to see what direction he and Mythos go in next. As much as I like this movie, I still am longing for some of the other characters from his Mythos to come in. Someone like maybe a Harry Osborn, some Gwen. I don't know. I don't know if those characters are gonna show up, but maybe a return to form as far as like a more, just maybe one of his villains. I didn't mind the change up of Jean. I've warmed up to it, but I would like a return as far as one of his villains goes. I think that would be nice. But one last thing I wanted to add is what you've been bringing up throughout the podcast, which is it's so refreshing to see this tactile, real suit on Tom and just seeing him interact with people and not feeling the rubber band cartoon effect of this larger in life character that doesn't really always feel like I can actually talk to this person when it comes to the previous films. Here, no, it's very apparent, like a lot of the shots, if not all, when it comes to just him walking around, is the guy in the suit. Like, obviously they might have touched it up a little bit in post, but overall, like, no, it looks like it's right there. And I think that's something that is a byproduct of some of these modern superhero films. I remember a big praise when it came to a film I love, and I know you love, which is The Batman. A big praise for that film is just seeing Batman just hanging out with the cops, hanging out in the city, and just seeing him in the suit all the time, right? Like, we're so used to so many superhero stories where the character's in and out of the suit, and that works fine. But, when you go back to the roots of the comics, these characters are in and out of the suits all the time, but they're also in the suit plenty of time, if not more. And so, like, seeing him, in this case, Spider-Man, hanging out with, his friends, with Damage Control, with Jean, Hulk, etc., Punisher, it's so refreshing because I'm like, oh, okay, this is what a comic book movie can be, what it should be, when, you realize that just because his character is in Spanish doesn't mean he's not allowed to hang out with just your average, ordinary citizen. If anything, it should mean, screw it, why not, right? Like, we have the power of storytelling, we have the power of filmmaking to put him in these unique scenarios that they might provide a chuckle, but that adds to the charm. And I'm really happy that this film and a lot of modern superhero films, something like, I think Superman, he was in Superman, he was the character of Superman plenty of times, Les Clark. As much as I love the dual persona, I do love that a lot of these newer ones have the character be their main superhero persona a lot of the runtime nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot to love about this movie overall. We already talked about how good the credit sequence was as far as, the New York montage of everyday life. The song is really nice and uplifting. Love that as just an overall note to in the movie on the director said in one of the interviews that the brand new day is not the start of the movie, it's the end of the movie. And you can really tell how well that credit sequence bookends the whole thing. So good stuff overall. Marvel is 1 of 1 this year. There's the post-credit sequence of the spider tracker picking up a Spider-Man in space. Oh. Yeah, probably leading into Doomsday or Secret Wars, one or the other. We'll see. I have zero faith for Doomsday. The trailer dropped a couple weeks ago. It looks like dog shit. Absolute cash grab nonsense. I'm on the record right now saying I think the movie's going to be a train wreck. There's a lot of pre-production woes going on right now where they're really struggling to find the movie in the edit. They don't know what the hell they're doing even by show up on the day and film whatever pages we have, MCU standards. I think the movie's going to be a train wreck.
I haven't followed a lot of the behind the scenes, but just going off the trailer and just going off of the last, 5-6 years since Endgame, as someone that follows these movies, I follow, what's, the current state of the MCU. Even if I don't see all of them, from the little I have seen, there's a very glaring lack of, I guess, a consistency, sure, but a lack of like cohesion within the universe. The universe itself it's just so distant right now. Every character just kind of lives in their own world. I don't have a good sense of, where everyone is and what anyone's relationship is with anybody else. And that's a big reason why that is because these characters, nobody knows each other. There's not as much of, oh, this character shows up in this movie and they make a brief cameo here and whatnot, right? Like, for example, in that original Infinity Saga run, something like, I don't know, it's not even my favorite movie, but in Ant-Man, Ant-Man goes to the Avengers compound and he runs into Falcon. And so they have a brief little fight, but they get to know each other. And then when you see them in Civil War, like, okay, so they have history. No, there's nobody has history right now.
There's nothing like that. No one knows anybody. No one shows up in each other's movies. These post-credit scenes are so disconnected. And that's overall like a large part of why I just don't feel anything when these characters share screen time together, at least in the trailer so far. Just seeing them meet for the first time, it's not like, oh my God, like it was in the previous phases. It feels so obligatory, Like, I'm just really not very excited for this movie. So it's a good thing Marvel is 1 of 1 for the year so far with Spider-Man because, holy shit, it's raked in $1.5 billion in less than a week. We're recording this on Thursday, August 6th. It had the biggest domestic opening of all time for previews. It overall had the biggest domestic box office opening weekend of all time. Beating out Avengers Endgame with $372 million. Fastest movie to reach $1 billion of 2026. It will more than likely go down when its theatrical run is over as the highest grossing film of the year. And I also wouldn't be surprised. It's almost a shoo-in that it's going to crack $2 billion at this point. It's going to crack $2 billion worldwide when it's all said and done. We're a week into the box office run, and it's at 1.5. Insane. And Spider-Man's just that guy. He has that pull at the box office, so we all love showing up for Spidey, so good stuff.
Dubs all around. Hell yeah. Maybe one day Batman can make that much, but it's all good. I will love Batman regardless.
Same. It's been a good episode. I've enjoyed talking to you about the films we've talked about. July had some heavy hitters, some bangers. I appreciate you guys listening. If you made it to the end, please like the video, comment what you thought about either of these movies. Follow me and Jared in our socials on Letterboxd or on Instagram, Twitter, whatever you use. Our handles are in the description. Thank you guys for listening. This is Pac signing out.
Adios, amigos.
Peace out, guys. Thanks for listening.